Now, the dimension of time is a fractal pattern. It functions very much like a hologram, meaning you can find the past in the present, you can find the future in the present, you can find the present in the future, you can find the past in the future. They form this interconnected framework. Now, we start off in the unconscious present only aware of, in our culture, what the five senses allow us to see. And this is the unconscious present. And to move in the direction of grace and intelligence and well-being, you expand your sense of time by going into the past. You study history, and it will give you perspective and context on what's going on in the present. It will give you an awareness of what's significant and what's not by going out of the present into the past, and then understanding the connection with the past and the present. You can then project the future. When you study momentum and physics and probability fields, you can say things like, you know, if we continue to create CO2 at the same rate we are today, we are likely to reach this in 10 years and this in 20 years and that in 50 years, depending on the model used. Most people are using models that project higher weather volatility, increased global warming, decreased ozone layer, and more pollution. Now, by projecting the present momentum of energy into the future, you now have a bigger perspective on the present than you did before you do that, because now you can look at the present from the past perspective and the projected future. This is what we'll do if nothing changes. For example, if murder rates have been rising for 5% a year for the last 100 years, pretty good chance if nothing changes, they will rise 5% next year. This takes us into the next dimension, an exercise around time, which is to edit the future and correlate that with the present. So we're going to currently melt the polar ice caps at this year. If we change this in the present, we will push that year out 20 years. We'll melt the polar ice caps slower. If we change all of these things, we might generate more ice on the ice caps if we did this, 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 and this. And so you edit the future and correlate it to the present. The present is always expanding as we're going forward in this dynamic. The present is now laced. The relationships between the future and the present are more visible. So the present is getting bigger. Our awareness, our consciousness is getting bigger. And this ties into another system that basically says that the more conscious and masterful you become, the better will be your reality. Because the underlying drive of every human being is to feel sustainably better and avoid feeling chronically worse. The variable then is mastery. And the beginning of mastery is consciousness. So as we expand consciousness, in this case around time, we're increasing the probability of well-being. Now, this is particularly the case if we're expanding consciousness in yin and yang simultaneously. If we expand consciousness on how to build more and more deadly weapons while remaining completely ignorant about our own human drives, you don't necessarily see that expansion. It's one of the reasons chauvinism is so dangerous. We're now moving into the projected future. We're now editing the future that we want. We're saying this is the future we're going to get. What is the future that we want? And how would we edit that? And the last step is to actually imagine an ideal future, to create in imagination an ideal future and measure the distance between the ideal future and the projected future, and create a relationship between the ideal future. One of the things this ties into is clearly written goals. It's been estimated, and it's been my experience, that if I have clearly written yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily goals, I get 400% more done of what is on that list than if I don't create that list. And so if I'm intelligent enough to pick goals that correlate with creating lots of well-being efficiently, then clearly written goals are going to project that. And it's an overlay of the technology of building a relationship between past, present, and future that is scientific, that is intelligent. The last step is to come back to the present moment. In that poem, to come back to the place where we began and know it for the first time. Now the present moment is filled with possibility, dimension, and consciousness. It is a more valuable present moment than the just living in the present that we began with.